Welcome back. If you've been following along on the path of economic reconciliation, this is our Module 3, and you're doing amazing work, so keep it up. And if you're just jumping in, you've picked a great time. Today, we are diving into something that is completely reshaping how business gets done in Canada. We're going to break down some key acronyms you absolutely need to know: UNDRP and FPIC. Now, these aren't just legal jargon. They represent a whole new standard for partnership.
So here's our game plan for today. First, we'll look at the new legal landscape. Then we'll get right into the thick of it, the huge difference between just consulting and getting real consent. After that, we'll make FPIC super practical by breaking down its 4 pillars. We'll also cover the seriously high price of getting this wrong, and then we'll finish up by showing you how to turn all of this into a major strategic win. All right, let's jump in.
Okay, let's set the stage. We are talking about a massive change in Canadian law. And I mean, this isn't just a few new regulations. This is a complete shift in the relationship between corporations, the government, and Indigenous nations.
This really is the million-dollar question for any company in Canada right now, isn't it? Is just going through the motions of consulting with Indigenous communities good enough? Well, if you think the answer is yes, you are working with an old, outdated playbook. The answer today is a clear, definitive no.
And there you have it. This says it all. The law has changed. Period. The old way of doing business is over. And with the UNDPR Act now in place, these ideas are no longer just international goals, they are baked into Canadian law. The bar for how you conduct business has been permanently raised.
So here's where it gets really interesting. You've got 2 huge things happening at once. First, the UNDPR Act basically wove the UN Declaration right into the fabric of Canadian law. Second, the Truth and Reconciliation Commission specifically called out the corporate world, saying you need to adopt UNDPR. This creates a kind of dual standard. The government might have its legal minimum for consultation, but for businesses like yours, the expectation, the reconciliation standard, is way, way higher. All right, so this new reality brings us to maybe the most important and most misunderstood part of this whole conversation: the difference between consultation and consent. Getting these two mixed up is probably the #1 reason projects get stuck, challenged in court, or just fail completely.
Let's make this super simple. Over on the left, you have the duty to consult. Think of this as the absolute floor, the bare minimum required by law. But on the right, you have FPIC, free, prior, and informed consent. This isn't just a higher bar, it's the new gold standard for business. It is what real reconciliation looks like on the ground.
This table really gets to the heart of it. Just look at the source. Duty to consult comes from Canadian law, but FPIC comes from international human rights. Now, here's the biggest difference of all: the outcome. With consultation, the goal is basically to lessen the negative impacts. But with FPIC, the goal is actual consent, which you'll notice includes the right for a community to just say no. And look at the timing. Consultation often feels like an afterthought, whereas FPIC demands you start talking right from the very beginning.
So what does FPIC actually look like when the rubber hits the road? It can sound a bit abstract, I know. So let's break it down into 4 essential, really practical pillars.
Here they are: free, prior, informed, and consent. And let me be clear, this is not a checklist where you can pick and choose. Think of it as a 4-legged stool. If one leg is missing, the whole thing falls over. For consent to be real, all 4 of these have to be there. So let's look at each one.
First up is free. This one sounds simple, but it's so important. It just means that the community's decision has to be made without any funny business. No manipulation, no arm twisting, no intimidation, no pressure. None of it.
So how do you make sure consent is free? Well, it means you have to respect their timeline, not force your own. It means you provide balanced, objective information, not just a glossy marketing brochure. And it means you have to be really careful that any community benefits you offer don't feel like you're trying to buy a yes.
The second pillar is prior. This one is all about timing, and it's a huge shift in thinking. Consent isn't the finish line you cross at the end of a process. It's the starting block. It has to be sought way, way before any shovels hit the ground or any big decisions get locked in.
Let's make this concrete. Say you have a mining project in mind. Prior means you're talking with the local nation before you've even acquired the land, let alone designed the mine. It's about co-creating something together, not just showing up with a finished plan and asking for a rubber stamp.
Pillar number 3 is informed.
This means you have to share everything, the good, the bad, and the ugly. And it's not just what you share, it's how you share it. Dropping a 500-page technical report on someone's desk doesn't count. The information has to be easy to get, easy to understand, and delivered in a way that makes sense for that community.
To be truly informed, a community needs to see what independent experts are saying about the project's impacts. They need to understand what the other options are. And this is so important. They need to know that no is a very real option, and you have to explain exactly how that process works.
And all of this leads us to the final and honestly the most transformative pillar, consent. This is where the power dynamic really truly shifts. It means you respect the final decision the community makes, based on their way of doing things. And yes, let's be crystal clear, that includes their right to say no.
For a company, this means you've got to do your homework. You need to understand how that nation makes decisions and respect that process. And you have to be ready for any outcome. If the answer is no, you better have a plan B, whether that's a major redesign or even walking away entirely. Okay, so those are the 4 pillars of FPIC. Now let's talk about what happens when companies try to cut corners and just do the bare minimum. We're moving from the what to the so what, and believe me, the cost of getting this wrong is incredibly high. You know, the risks of sticking with that old consultation model are just catastrophic. Seriously, imagine your flagship multi-billion-dollar project getting frozen by a court order. Picture years of delays just bleeding money. Think about ESG investors running for the hills, calling your project a toxic asset. This isn't just a bad PR day, it's a fundamental threat to your entire business.
But look, this isn't all doom and gloom, not at all. Let's flip the script, because embracing FPIC isn't just about avoiding risk, it's about unlocking incredible value. It's about gaining a serious strategic advantage in a world that's changing fast.
The business case for doing this right is just undeniable. With real consent, you get project certainty, and that's the one thing every investor is looking for. You get a rock-solid social license to operate, you get to spend your time and money building things, not fighting in court. And best of all, you open the door to real partnership, which leads to projects that are more profitable, more sustainable, and way more innovative. This quote from our source material just sums it up perfectly. The cost of achieving FPIC is an investment in project certainty, while the cost of inadequate consultation is the high risk of project failure. It's really that simple. One is a smart investment in your future, the other is a reckless gamble. So, everything we've talked about really comes down to this one question. Is your company still playing the old game, aiming for the legal minimum and just hoping for the best? Or are you playing the new game, the winning game, aiming for certainty, for partnership, and for shared success? Because in the Canada we live in today, only one of those strategies really has a future.